Boom! There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Driving sales in the digital age. If you are not making sales online, chances are you're not going to be in business very long. That's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get this show on the road. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life: prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone, because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros.
Bros, in today's digital landscape where e-commerce reigns supreme, businesses are constantly seeking innovative strategies to thrive and succeed online. Our guest today is an expert in the field and founder and CEO of Elevatum, a digital agency based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He specializes in helping brands grow and scale their e-commerce incentives and is dedicated to embracing new approaches and bidding farewell to outdated practices. He's here to share his insight and expertise. So let's welcome to the show, Mr. Steve Pemberton. All right, Steve, welcome to the program, man.
Bro, thank you so much. That was an amazing intro. Thank you again for having me.
Of course. Let's do this thing, dude. Question number one. Everybody who comes on the show has a business, a product, a service that they're selling. What is it that you do for a living, man? Simplify it for me.
Man, really making it simple. I actually have two different companies. So the one that you just introduced me as with Elevatum, that one is we're working with brands that are usually making about $500,000 a year top line, and we're helping them scale to over $1 million a year. That's part of the backstory, which I'm sure we'll jump into in a little bit. But yeah, that's part of our backstory. We've done a few $1 million online, all in e-commerce, Amazon, Shopify, that kind of stuff. And then I also have the other company with HoloCo, which is what you'll see with my email. HoloCo is simply a business that we build out everything needed for coaches, consultants, and authors to be able to run virtual events. So we pretty much do everything needed, so that all they got to do is just get up and speak.
Perfect, man. And every entrepreneur that goes on the show, I know they're targeting somebody specific. And for Elevatum, you said you're looking at people who are making about $500,000 top line revenue. Is there anything else that you're targeting, like a specific e-commerce type of product or service? Who are you talking to?
So especially with that, not really. Like, we are not niche down where it's like we only work with sneaker companies or we only work with people who do jewelry, because I've worked in so many different industries and niches. I mean, for us, we had beauty, we did home and garden, we've worked with people who are jewelers, we've worked with people who sell shoelaces. So it's like we've done it in so many different niches that we're more general now. We're more like higher level at this point.
So it's just a top line revenue type thing then in that case, right? If you're already building a revenue stream, then you're good to go. Tell me about your education journey. Like, what does it take to become an agency owner? What does it take to start to really help these e-commerce brands take off to that next level?
Yeah. So with that, the biggest piece that we saw, like when you talk about education level, I mean, I can get real simplistic. I've got a high school diploma and that's it. And then above that, it's just about educating myself. And what I mean by that is a lot of the extra funds that I would have put into college or anything else, what I did is I went to work, because to me, it just didn't make sense in spending a lot of money on college when I could just start making money. And that was what was instilled in me at a really young age. And then as I grew, and especially once I started getting into business, and then once we started running our own very successful e-commerce businesses, what we did was we just took a lot of that profit and we would just dump it into conferences, courses, mentors, whatever it took for us to learn what we needed to learn. Because the biggest pieces and some of the biggest levers that people will to pull in the e-commerce businesses are teams. So a lot of times as a solopreneur, you can sit there and grow a Shopify store, an Amazon store to $500,000 or more a year without really having a big team. You can do it with just yourself. But if you want to get to a point where you have it at scale, where it's doing over $1 million a year top line, you're bringing home about $300,000 a year in profit, and it's not taking a ton of your time, then you have to be, you have to know how to hire, and B, and you have to know how to lead. So being able to grow those teams is one of the biggest pieces that I learned. And I actually learned that through a job. So the way that I learned that was I spent 5.5 years working for Pepsi. And at Pepsi, I started at the ground level. I was like one step above the janitor, and I worked my way up to being one of the youngest managers in Pepsi. And in being a manager, it was just how to build teams and then how to manage them at a sustainable level and a scalable level, so that way the people felt bought in. And so that's what we do when we work with our clients, is we help them not only identify the weak spots, as we help them build their teams and actually help manage their teams. That way they can focus on scaling, they can focus on the vision. Because really, as the business owner, that's what you should focus on. You should focus on moving the business forward and not just like working in the business, because then you just build yourself a high paying job at that point.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing like the education level, because at the end of the day, like times have completely changed. Not everyone is on the college path, and even if you are on the college path, doesn't guarantee that you're going to have any success after you get that degree in the first place. But what you stated there also is that you didn't not get educated. You just took a different educational route, right? It wasn't a college. You took on courses and mentorships, and you found people to kind of help push that agenda that you were already focusing your attention on. So tell me about your starting that entrepreneur journey. Like you were working at PepsiCo, you're learning all these things. How'd you decide that, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own? What was that story like?
Yeah, so funny enough, my first ever dive into entrepreneurship was at 20. So at 20, I actually got married really, really young. I was 20, my wife was 19, and we had a son on the way. So not great decision making back then, but what ended up happening was whenever my son came along, my wife said, "Hey, I'm not going back to work." And I said, "That's great, but I'm making $13 an hour, so you got to figure out something." So she started a business online, and I watched her scale her business from 0 to $500 a month. And I was blown away because I didn't know you could make money online, because my dad worked as a mechanic for over 30 years, and my mom worked as a cashier, or she worked as a clerk for over 30 years. And so for me, is I just knew manual labor. I didn't know that you could do stuff online. So again, not super smart at 20, is I said, you know what's better than one person doing it? How about both of us do it? So I quit my job and I come home and we've got like $500 in our bank account. Rent is $750 the next month. So we lost everything super quick and had to move into a basement. But that was really the first dive into entrepreneurship. And that was before Pepsi. And then Pepsi came along after that, like deep, depressing, dark season of this basement. Pepsi comes along, and it took years, because I didn't want to touch it again, because I felt burned. I felt like this was the worst decision I could have ever made. I hurt my family, all these different things. And realistically, looking back, I can see how I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the capital, so it didn't make sense. But in that moment, it made perfect sense. So whenever I got to that stage again, it was 2018. And in 2018, that's actually when my wife jumped into business first. Like I told her no. She had talked to my mom, and my mom had talked her into doing Amazon. And I said, no. I said, we're not doing that. I'm finally making enough money as a manager for you to just be a stay-at-home mom, and I can just focus on making money. And she said, no, I want to do this. So she jumped in and did it anyways. And it actually made this huge divide between us, because I was not supportive, because I already had said, no, this is the way I wanted it. But I'm so thankful for her, because she taught me perseverance, and she taught me how to go for your dreams. Because from 2018 to the end of 2019, I watched her scale an Amazon business from 0. And anytime she'd get a return or a bad feedback, she would cry, to scaling that thing to over $1 million in top line sales in a year. And so when I saw that happen, now granted, this is one thing I do want to say for everyone watching, is the profit margins was terrible. It was 10%. Plus we had a capital investor. So with that, we made basically nothing, because we had to keep some cash flow left over just to keep the business running. So we made maybe 20, 30 grand that we actually were able to keep. I was making more in the job. So, but the one thing that taught me is what I saw was my wife was not great with teams. She was not great with leading teams. We had 7 employees. So I went, wait, there's something here that I can do. I was in the supply chain and logistics field. So it made sense that I could sit there and say, if I could tighten up their suppliers, that relationship with their suppliers, if I can build their teams to where it's actually sustainable and scalable, then all I have to do is just get that from 10% margins to like 20, 25% margins. Now, all of a sudden, we're doing pretty good. And so in June of 2020 is when I made that jump fully into business again.
I guess COVID kind of helped there, right? Gave you the opportunity to put the time in. But that's awesome already, making $1 million top line revenue. And I like how you emphasize that the profit margins weren't there, because those are the glamour numbers. They sound great when you're at $1 million top line revenue, but what are you keeping? What part of that is actually working for you? And then you gave that business a different approach, right? You were like, look, I have a skill set now. How can I apply the skill set that I have into making this business better? And the top line revenue didn't change, but the infrastructure inside did. And that's where your profit margins kind of took off to that next level. I love that. That's great. If someone was going to start today, now that you have Amazon, fulfillment by Amazon, you have drop shipping, you have print on demand, you have Walmart stores, and there's so many of these younger kids that are like, dude, I'm just going to do something like that, but they don't know where to get started. What advice would you give them if they're getting started today?
Man, I actually am so glad that you asked this question, because so often I get asked a question. It's like, okay, so how do you start your Shopify store, or how do you start your Amazon store? Because with Amazon, we ended up pivoting shortly after I had come home. We pivoted away from Amazon because we got shut down. There was some stuff happened with our suppliers, and we were 100K in debt, pivoted over into Shopify. And that's where we were able to make our next million, but that one with 30% margin. So much better. We actually make some really good money and travel to Disney World and Disneyland and do all the fun stuff. But the reason why I love your question is I had a conversation with someone a few months ago, and they were in that same exact spot where they said, hey, somebody told me to just talk to you about e-commerce. My buddies and I are in college. We're thinking about starting a company. What do we do? It's like, do we do Amazon? Do we drop ship? Do we do print on demand? And for me, honestly, there's some gold, because usually if you're just about to start, there's two different people. One is these are the people who have capital. And now the majority of people are going to be the people who don't have the capital, but they have the idea. I think, and I'm going to speak to these people first. So the people who they don't have the capital but have the idea, what I would do is I would look at how much money you do have available. What do you have on hand? And the reason why I say that is because the barrier to entry into drop shipping is very low. So anyone can do it. Same thing with print on demand. So that's going to be harder to stand out. So what I would suggest, and this is the same thing I suggested to them, is look in your local area. So there's these things that have popped up all over the place, and they're in almost every city now. There's multiple here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They're called bin stores. So it's where people get Amazon returns, they get Target returns, they get whatever kind of returns it is. You can go there and you can make a lot of money. We took $500 and flipped it into $3,000 just because we knew what we were looking for. So what I would suggest is taking your capital, going to one of these stores, or going and doing the garage sale route, finding some stuff, multiplying your cash first. And then once you get a healthy cash flow, once you have some good capital, I'd say 5 to 10 grand, that you're okay with just putting it towards a business, I would look at Amazon first. Amazon, and not necessarily going big and trying to create your own brand or doing private label. And I would honestly, I'd piggyback off of some of these other bigger brands. I mean, that's where we made our first million. That's where we were making really good. We were able to start making really good money even with Amazon, as we just found good wholesalers. We were able to find good suppliers. We would buy lots of things, like an actual lot. So that just means a lot of a one product or of that brand. And then we would sell it because that's going to have traction. One thing that I've seen with people who get into Amazon is they'll do private label, but they won't do enough research and they don't have the dollars to actually advertise. So they'll spend $5 grand on a product and then it's sitting in their garage and they can't sell it because they just expected people to show up to their product because they put it on Amazon. So realistically, that doesn't happen very often, but you can piggyback off of these brands that are already spending the money to get the people to it. So that's where I would start. And then once you start multiplying that, then you start making some good sustainable cash flow. Then I would look at trying to create your own brand, but doing it somewhere else. I would do it whether on Shopify, do it on another platform so you can control your email list, because you can't do that on Amazon. But that's where you can start growing out your email list, your actual customers, your own following, all that stuff. And I think that that's kind of like the full way that I would look at it. And so that's kind of my point of view. Now, if you're the second type of people and you already have the money, let's say you have the capital, I would go with private label drop shipping. Or something where you create your own brand, you have a supplier, probably if you're in the United States, you have it in the United States, and then you have it where they fulfill it to your customers, but it's with your packaging, your stuff, you're running the advertising. And that's a great business, low barrier to entry. You just have to find the right ways to stand out. And then once you're able to do that, you can create a good brand without having to invest a ton of time. But those are the two different routes that I would go depending on who you are.
It sounds like a lot of it has to do with your marketing capability of the product that you're putting out there, whether you're white label drop shipping or you're buying the product, wholesaling it, and then turning around at wholesale and turning around and selling it at retail.
Yep.
So what's the difference between doing it as an affiliate marketer versus actually stocking the product? Because I'd imagine stocking the product's got to be expensive, whether you warehouse it, put it in your garage, you got to keep it somewhere.
Yep.
Why do one versus the other?
So the way that you would do, or the reason why you would do one versus the other is if you're going to basically do the affiliate marketing side is the way you put it, I would just call it basically like the drop shipping side. If you would do it that way, it's harder to find the right suppliers. Like if I'm sitting there, and this is something that's a big issue with print on demand too, is you're never going to see it. So you don't actually know the quality unless you sit there and you buy your own stuff and you check the quality. So with a supplier, it may all look great, but you're going to have to pay for a sample, and the sample may be great, but what happens when they get stress test? So let's say you start scaling that thing up and you went from 1 order a month to 100 orders a month. Is the quality still good? And let's say you go from 100 orders a month to 100 orders a day. Now is the quality still good? You don't know because you're not seeing it. Now, if you're stocking your own inventory, you can check those things. You can make sure that they're getting packed. Your shipping times are really good. So that's the two different ways. The reason why you would do the one where, because for us, we've done a lot of these different models, and we've done pretty much everything except for like KDP, which is you're making ebooks, is with putting the stuff in your garage or having it at a third-party logistics company, is you can track your inventory really well. So it's like you can do these things basically forecasting. So with forecasting is you can know this is how many showed up in my warehouse. They're going to tell you how many have gone out, and they're going to be able to check quality. So if anything's broken, it gets minused. So that you have a little bit more quality assurance when you're not just sending it from supplier straight to customer, when you're kind of the middleman on that. But again, it's going to take more time. It's going to take more resources on your end because you're going to have to get the packaging. You're going to have to put the time in. So those are just the two different ways.
Let me ask you about the biggest mistake you made, because I know, and it doesn't matter what business you have, you've made some mistakes. You already shared the one that you made at the beginning where you ended up having to live in a basement. But once you got into it that second time, once 2020 hit, what are some of the mistakes that you've made that you would like to share with people so that they don't make the same mistake you did?
One big one, and this is really good for people my age and younger, is be very careful of who you get your information from. And the reason why I say that is there's so many different people. All you have to have is a phone at this point, and you can go rent a Lamborghini, and now all of a sudden you're a guru. And so for me is what happened with us. The reason why we got shut down was there was a person that my wife had followed for years in the Amazon field. So when I came home, it had already been a couple of years. She was acquainted with these people. She knew them. She had talked to them on a few different occasions, and they were wholesale. And that's what they had done. That's how they had built their multi-million-dollar company. And what they did was they did something that you're not allowed to do. So basically, imagine if I went and I bought a pallet of product, and then I turned around and I sold it to you, and then you sent it in, but you don't have the invoice. So what happens if you do that with Amazon, you're going to get flagged. So let's say that, and for me to try to bypass is I buy this product, you buy the product from me, and then I invoice you, but it's not being invoiced from the original supplier. So what ended up happening is because we didn't have an invoice from the original supplier, we got shut down. They didn't get hurt at all, but we got shut down. So just being aware that just because somebody may have success and just because it is working, and even the stuff that they tell you to do is working, be very careful and actually vet through the entire process just to make sure. Because for us and for her, she made this decision. It was like $15,000 to buy this lot of product. And she just did it because it made sense at that time. Like she knew the people, they knew her. And we thought this is great selling. This stuff there's no one else on the listing, so it's going to fly off the shelves. And if we had approval to do it, yes, it would have been exactly that. But because they had tried to go around the system, unfortunately, we were the ones that got hit. So that was one of those big mistakes. Another one is when, especially, we'll say we'll move a little further ahead in my story where we're sitting there and we're doing really well. And we built another team of 4 people. The big mistake that you can make with building a team is you sit there and you start micromanaging, because when you start building a team and you have those people in place, you got to have a level of trust. So you actually have to trust that they are going to do it. And in the beginning, you have to release and understand that they're not going to do 100% of your capacity. So if I handled somebody to pack stuff and I've been packing it for a year and I hire somebody to do it, their first few weeks, their first month even, they're not going to be at 100%. There's no way that the same amount of experience that I have, I can instill into this person in the matter of a few days worth of training, and they're going to be at the same level. So just trusting that it's okay for there to be a little bit of a dip, for these people to learn, encourage them, help them grow, give them a track that they can grow, where they're not just always going to be stuck doing the same job. And that's where you can build a business that you can work on and not work in, where you can travel and it's still paying you. And that's the dream for entrepreneurs, is to get to the point where you're not having to take all the calls and all the customer service and do all of the stuff. So those are the two big ones. Those are the really two big mistakes that we've seen and we've encountered.
Lessons learned, right? I'm sure you learned those lessons. You started to implement them. Now, what does your company do best? What is it that you're here helping people do that you're just a rock star at? You've had the experience, you've made the mistakes, you have the processes in place. What are you helping people do that you do best?
Build great teams. That's an easy answer, because it's from start to finish, hiring them, making sure that they're the right people, training them, making sure that they're trained really well, and helping these, because you want to hire the right people in a business. Sometimes you'll hire, and the bigger the business gets, the more specified that person needs to be. So if it's a marketing person, maybe that marketing person also has to make the graphics, and they got to go make the videos, and they have to do all this editing. But the bigger the company gets, that marketing person may honestly just be looking at the strategy. What's our strategy? And in the beginning, if you're a smaller company, because even $1 million a year is not a very big company, is you need people who are more like a Swiss Army knife, where they can do more things. So hiring the right people for the roles and encouraging them to continue to learn, encouraging them to actually keep walking this thing out to where they understand that there's growth. Because I've been in positions, and I'm sure that people listening have also been in positions where you've done the thing for a long time and you feel like, wait, I don't know where I'm going after this. Is it just this? And so building teams, managing teams is definitely our strong suit.
That's definitely something difficult to do. Building them, growing them, managing them is not the easiest thing in the world. It does take some skill set. I'm glad you're out there helping people do that. And I feel like every business, no matter where they're at, they're always looking to improve on something, to make things better, to become more efficient in some way. What is it that you're struggling with today? What is it that your company could use a little help in, and that might make you more efficient, that might take you to the next level, that might, like in your original case, take you from a 10% profit margin to that 25 or 30% profit margin?
Oh yeah, this is great, especially for e-commerce. So I actually have a client that we run his virtual events, and he's kind of at the cutting edge of this right now, and it's using AI. So I know the AI is like the hot thing. It's kind of like cryptocurrency. It's blowing up right now. And with AI though, AI is so, if you know how to use it, especially ChatGPT at this moment, if you know how to use it, you can cut out a lot of time and effort when it comes to building your descriptions, when it comes to finding the right products, and how to market, creating buyer personas, all these things. If you have the right prompts, which is what my client did, if you have the right prompts in place, it shortcuts your time. And in 2.5 hours, I watched him build something that took us weeks. So that's the one area which is crazy, because I mean, with me being younger, the way that technology is evolving right now is you have to stay up on technology. What worked 5 years ago will not work in the next 5, because of how quickly technology is changing. So just staying aware. That's why you have to continue to want to grow, because growing is just being aware of things. So as I'm more aware of AI and how to use it and what it looks like and how people are out here using it, especially we had a client that his stuff was all print on demand. And with his stuff, we were showing him AI. How do you use, because he was paying a designer $60 per design. It's like you could do the same thing on Midjourney, and Midjourney was like $15 a month. So So that's going to save him money. It's going to get him better designs, and it's something that he can do at the house, and it takes him a few minutes. So I think that's the evolution. That's the one thing that we're trying to stay at the cutting edge of and stay in front of, is that AI revolution that's coming.
It is making a big difference. I know my students use it all the time to try to cheat on their papers. And I'm like, you're using it wrong. You got to use it the right way, dude. Like trash in, trash out. If you're going to ask it to write you an essay on Abe Lincoln, it's going to give you something your teacher's going to know you didn't write it. But you ask the right prompts the right way, all of a sudden it sounds just like you. And that's exactly what you're doing here when you're creating copy for your product and for your ads and for whatever you need. You got to give it the prompt that it needs so it understands exactly what you're looking for, who you're talking to, and then it's going to give you some great stuff. I love that. What's the vision of your company? Where are you going from here? You've come a long way from being in the basement to being able to travel the world and take the family to different places. Where do you see your company going here in the future?
So here in the future, where I see the company going is actually a great question, because so often I've heard people answer this question And because in 10 years, they'll ask you questions like, where in 10 years, where do you see your company? Honestly, I don't know. And it's not from lack of vision. It's from the fact that I know it'll evolve. So right now, when it comes to e-commerce, if we're helping people one-to-one, so let's say in the consulting capacity, helping them build their teams, in 10 years, it'll probably be in the standpoint where instead of me going in and doing this, I'll have hired people. It'll be more at scale. It'll be something that doesn't take as much of my time. It's not as high touch. And also, even with the virtual event side, I believe with the virtual event side, that's something that's more that I honestly could see going away in 10 years. Because in 10 years, you could have an AI that sit there and you have just recorded a video, because this is already something that's happening. You can do this with courses where you record a video with you talking, you read a script, and then what happens is an AI will create you an avatar that looks just like you, sounds like you, uses your words, and you can create whole courses out of it. So in the next 10 years, there won't be a need for people to run virtual events when there's an AI that can do it for you. So I think that the virtual events business will actually probably be gone by then. And with the e-commerce business, with the way that it'll evolve and change, I believe that my business will have to evolve and change to where now instead of just having to build teams, it's like, how do we implement AI to do these things? How do we implement different technologies? If it's not AI, what is it? But I think that AI is the next really big thing because you got Google and all this other stuff. That's a whole different discussion. But I think that the evolution is what's going to be the most exciting, because even if the evolution means having to cut out a business and focusing on another one, I know that that's going to lead to just bigger and better things for the world as a whole.
It's changing, dude. And I agree with you. 10 years from now, you don't know what the world's going to look like, how your packages are going to be delivered. Virtual events might be a thing, but instead it's like taking a free guy version of Fortnite, and all of a sudden, like, you're there without even having to go. It's a different type of virtual experience or augmented experience. Who knows where it's going to be? Steven, thank you very much for coming on today, dude. You shared a lot of great information. I love a lot of the personal anecdotes and the case studies that you share, because they really kind of show people exactly where you were, where you're going, and how you're helping people get to where they want to go. If people want to reach out to you, they want to find out more about what it is you do, how you do it, and get the help themselves, how can they do that?
Yeah, so StevenPemberton.com is the best place to go. It has all my social medias on there. It has more of my backstory. It even has some of the episodes from podcasts that I've done. So if you want to learn more about me, you can go there. That's probably the best spot.
Perfect, man. Perfect. And I got one last question. Everything from when you booked on our show to getting reminder emails and text messages to now recording an episode with the Business Bros. What was your experience like being on the podcast today?
So I love the podcast. Especially the video at the beginning. That was super high quality. I want to applaud you on that. And I just want to say you did an amazing job with that. I would say that there was especially when I first booked, it was a couple months ago now, there was a couple hiccups along the way where it was like, hey, thank you for being on the show. And I was like, I haven't even been on the show yet. And it was like, oh, shoot, my bad. And so there's a couple of hiccups, which is completely understandable. That's how technology works. But besides that, it's been a great experience. And I just want to thank you again for having me.
Perfect, man. Perfect. Yeah, and that's what happens sometimes. Technology does its thing, and we just have to adjust and correct. So thank you very much for coming on the show today, ladies and gentlemen. One more time, Steve Pemberton. I'll spell it for you. Steven is StevenPemberton.com. Make sure you guys check it out. If you're interested in doing any of the e-commerce stuff, you're going to want to use a mentor. That's the shortest way to get to where you want to go. Can you learn it yourself? Absolutely. Can you do it yourself? Absolutely. But you're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way. And if you want to shorten that learning curve, then make sure you reach out to one of those professionals. Steven Pemberton on .com. Make sure you guys reach out to him, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Business Bros. Catch you guys later. Peace. And we're out.
Peace.
It's over. Go home. Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast. But not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.biz to get started.